right. What's going on, guys? How are you? John Davis here.
Chris Neal.
Welcome to Living 360.
Yes, we're back again with another episode. Well, I'm very excited about this. We face this all the time in our medical clinic, but we're going to talk about weight loss today.
I love that you said I'm very excited. Like there's anything that you're not very excited about. Like you're never going to have a podcast where we're going to do this today. I really don't want to talk about it.
I'm really not excited about this one,
is gonna be
but we'll talk about it anyway.
You can skip this podcast.
You caught me with that. Yeah.
But no, weight loss is going to be a really good episode. It's obviously a very highly discussed topic. It's a super huge focal point in culture as well as in everything that we do within the clinic. But in general, it's a big part of our life. It's something that is a big subject for a lot of people.
And there's a lot of opinions on it, varying opinions, and there's a lot of marketing, and I hate that. You know, there's a lot of salesy stuff. It's a whole industry in the U.S. especially. Yeah. You know, so this is going to be good to break down the real science, what really matters, what doesn't, you know, and things that are effective and the complexity of it all. Because it's more than just eat this and you'll lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a setting within the body of where you want to fit. Right, like how your body wants to hold its weight. And so there's a whole lot that's involved in weight loss. And actually, I think it's funny to call it weight loss. It is weight loss, but it's really about healthy body composition more than anything. Because
it should be.
It shouldn't. It's not. I mean, there's more to it than just losing weight. Lose weight, keep losing weight. You might not need to lose weight.
Yeah, but the scale oftentimes is a measure that people use for that. And they try to associate that with a healthy lifestyle, or what is health, you know. Like there's a whole history behind that. Like we've kind of attributed a certain look or a certain number on the scale, you know, to you know, being healthy or not, but we all know that's not necessarily a healthy way to be, you know. So
if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably had a trainer, and I was a personal trainer in college, so you've probably heard that whole thing where it's like, I got on the scale and I didn't lose weight, but you lost fat. But you gained muscle.
Yep. Yeah, and that's
but
real.
It actually is a real thing. It sounds like a cheesy sales thing, but it actually is true.
Yeah.
You know, weight is a very, very limited metric when you're looking at your health and your size and how you feel. So with that, we should jump in.
Now, there's a history behind weight loss, and we started to talk about this a little bit. I was able to find an article that talked about a newspaper that was printed out of Detroit in 1898. And they actually did a lot of research, and they wanted to find out what was the average weight for a man and what was the average weight of a woman in America in 1898. And I thought this was really interesting. So a man back then, 1898, an average weight was 140 pounds.
Really?
For an average adult male. Yeah, average. And for a woman, it was 123 pounds.
What year was this?
1898. 1898. So I went and I looked at the CDC, like for our current time, now, 2024. What is the average weight of a man?
Do we want to know this?
I know. Basically gained about 50 pounds, 60 pounds. 199.8 pounds is the average weight of a man, of an adult male, with a waistline of 40.5 inches. Oh. Yeah, and that's in America. Now, for a female, the average weight is 170 pounds with a waistline of 38.7 inches.
Wow.
So that's, you know, from a simplistic standpoint, science and medicine, they've attached this BMI thing, you know, and then sometimes they'll throw like the waistline in there as a measurement or a marker of health or whatever, or they statistically associate risk factors to a height to weight ratio.
Right.
You know, and I think that's a very simplistic way to look at things. Obviously, we all know that, you know, depending on your ethnic background and everything, your bone structure, everything's going to be very different. But, you know, healthy living and going back to that, a healthy lifestyle, you know, is important, you know. But the food and the availability of food is drastically different. Like the lifestyle, obviously, is drastically different 1898 till now.
Yeah. Well, and it's fascinating because we've had the industrial explosion, and America is highly focused on sales. It's a sales-based, economy. And of course, that's going to be the case globally. But we touched on this in the last episode when I talked about traveling and how wild it was to go to other places in the world and see that. I was like, wow, you don't see a lot of obesity. You don't see it.
Depending on where you go, a lot of other places,
Yeah, I mean, when I traveled around South America, I traveled around Europe. We were in Israel at one point. We went to Portugal, and pretty much consistently, it was you just don't see a lot of morbid obesity. It's a really uncommon thing. And then as soon as we landed in Atlanta, you know,
well,
we were reintroduced to the country
in the South. Yeah.
But there's fun. It's fascinating because there's a lot of movies that sort of have explored the backstory behind some of these large companies. One of which, you know, there was one on Pop-Tarts, which was not actually as accurate as it could have been. It could have done a really good job. They did some interesting things, but it talks a lot about the business of food. But it talks about the business of food and and the process of saying, okay, how do we make this more addictive? Really, I mean, because it was not processed in such a nefarious way. You know, it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna go and destroy it. It was more just like a very sort of, if I make this more chemically attractive to the body, then I will sell more product. Even though now we look at it and we're like, you put actual poison in the food and now America's hooked on it, and now we have this massive crisis. But it was not, I think it was more a series of poorly thought through
you know, that happens
approaches. And now but we see that here a lot, you know, in addition to the massive portions of food.
Absolutely. But the science is still the same. So in a little bit we're going to get to the scientific aspect of like what can actually be done. How does weight gain actually come about? And I wanted to start with a science question for you.
Oh,
okay.
Hit me.
Yes, this is exciting. The answer will come towards the end of the podcast. But when you lose weight, let's say you lose 10 pounds, where does the 10 pounds go?
To the same place that the missing socks go. That's my answer.
Think about it. Look, where does the weight go though? Like, think about it. Like, we can spitball a couple of answers, and I'll tell you the right answer towards the end.
Something about the liver for energy.
So the 10 pounds goes to the liver. Does it disappear? Like,
I would assume it would be broken down and processed for energy.
Okay.
That would be my best guess. Is that, you know, you have excess weight, you start into a caloric deficit, you do more training, you're triggering different pathways in the body for energy production, and then it's burning the fat to use it for energy.
But it has to turn into something.
Gold.
Okay. All right. So if you guys are sitting there watching this at home, think about it, and I'm curious to hear what your answers might be in the comments, but at the end I will give the answer. Okay. There was a really fascinating, I think he was a physicist actually from Australia that studied that one topic and spent like months and months researching to figure it out. And he did. It's not what you think.
You really don't think about it. You would never. You kind of just assume it disappears because
it doesn't disappear. It doesn't disappear.
So it's still in me.
No. We'll get to it. You'll like the answer. It's actually pretty interesting. So
we can't talk about weight loss without talking about body perception. They go hand in hand. You know, if we look at weight loss, the idea of weight loss is actually generally more. It's associated by and large to a perception of beauty standards. You know, what is my ideal look and my ideal aesthetic? That's why I think weight loss is sort of an under encompassing term, because it's really, people don't necessarily just want to lose weight. People want to look perfect. And
that's really what they're after when they say weight loss. I want to look like this.
I want to look perfect. And that body perfect has shifted. This is such a wild and weird example, but have you ever seen the show The Windsors?
No, but I'm familiar with the show.
So it's this funny satire, you know, making fun of the royal family. And it's funny because the character who plays Kate Middleton's sister, Pippa, she keeps going on and on about, she's like, well, I'm going to go get a prince because I've got the most amazing butt. And I was like watching this laughing, and she's like, oh no, she like steals the prince by showing him her butt. You know, and he's like, that's the most amazing butt. And I was like, where did this come from? And I Google it, and you see her in the white dress at Kate Middleton's wedding, and everybody was talking about how like she had this big butt, and you see it, and now like the standard has shifted so dramatically from the wedding. So I was like, you know, I had my binoculars on, like, where is it? And so it's a weird example, but the reality is, because our constructs around beauty and beauty standards change so rapidly and so consistently, but we are so involved in it, we don't recognize that shift.
That's true.
You know, so we're constantly kind of watching these curves, but we don't think it's that different. I mean,
but I think that's because we're guided so much by media. You know, the media plays so much into that. You know, like back in the 1800s, like the amount of pictures or photos that you had of yourself, the amount of times you see yourself in the mirror, or saw other people in other sources of, like, I think it was just newspaper back then. Like, there was no Instagram, obviously, that you could scroll through. So like our perception of that and our the importance of that, was drastically different. But here we are now. We're in this time here with an overabundance of food and an overabundance of media to tell us that we need to look perfect.
And it's interesting because social media has played such an enormous role in extremism, and I mean that in terms of not only the political side of how that looks, but physically. I mean, like the curves have gotten curvier, the muscles have gotten, and for men too. The fascinating thing is like our dimensions have gotten really fascinating. Like the shoulders have gotten broader, but the waists have gotten really, really disproportionately small. And I'm a regular person that looks at that stuff and is like, looks at it and then looks in the mirror and it's like, maybe they can shave my ribs down. How am I gonna get there?
That's it. The extremism like pervades into your own self-worth and your view of yourself, which I think is horrible. But it's difficult to kind of help that. So it's impossible to or it's almost impossible to look at those things and not think, oh my gosh, I'm not that. And all that's going to do is suck the motivation out of everything that you have towards just basic health, and being at your best, whatever that looks like.
I'm like a huge advocate for not having social media on your phone. I mean, we are in an industry where we have to have it, obviously, and it's part of your mind. If you're in any business, you have to have it. It's just part of what's necessary. But it's fascinating, and I don't mean this in any sort of a preachy way, but it's really interesting to see how your interaction with yourself and how your view of yourself changes when you're not subliminally affected by it, because you don't actually, more often than not, people aren't consciously looking at muscular men or Kim Kardashian. They're not it's subliminal. It's kind of, you're scrolling through and you're getting about you're consuming a large portion of different types of images, but they're falling into a certain standard, which is driven by an algorithm. And then that is subliminally put into your brain, and then you go through and you see yourself in a reflection as you're walking down the street. And you're like, you're stacking it against that thing that you just consumed. Like that. But when you're not constantly consuming it, you might not even notice the reflection. And that's one of the biggest things that I found as I took that stuff off my phone. And I realized I didn't notice, like there'd be times where I didn't realize what I was wearing, or I just didn't think about it as much. But when I had it constantly and was consuming it constantly, it was starting to take like 2 hours to get out of the house anymore. I had to put on the furs and everything just to go to Whole Foods.
I think, well, I've had social media, like you said. I mean, we kind of have to, but I try not to put as very much energy into it, but still, like, we look at those things and you look at yourself and you're like, oh man, and we're in the industry, and we know how to do these things, and we understand like perception and body dysmorphia. Body dysmorphia is a condition where you have a psychological issue where you never really feel like you look the way you're supposed to look, or it's never acceptable to you. And you end up doing extreme things to try and alter the way your body looks. That's body dysmorphia, which is a real thing. And we understand that in the industry that we're in because we see a lot of that. But we still can't help it. It impacts even us.
I mean, I think a degree of dysmorphia is generally going to show up with most people that are very committed to their health and fitness.
Well, I talk to my patients about this a lot. It's very, very common that someone will talk to me and they'll say, well, I'll ask them, what is your goal? And well, I think I might be able to get down to, if I lose 15 pounds, I'd be happy, and it's like, well, I hate like, those like, guarded answers. Like, give me a real goal, like give me a real dream or something, and whatever that is, if that's 17 pounds or 20, 25 pounds, whatever. But I want it to be something that we can like push for. And like, well, no, I'd be happy. I'd be happy with this, and I'd say, well, like the way you sound, it's like you feel like you can't do it. Like, you really could lose 25 pounds if you wanted to. And they say, well, I know maybe I could, but that's a lot of work, and I don't want to be vain. And I know if I say that out loud, then I think I'm being vain by wanting to be like, by wanting to lose 25 pounds. I mean, they almost like
talk themselves out
of it and put it on themselves. So I actually think vanity is okay. Like, vanity's fine. Obviously, body dysmorphia is not okay. But wanting to take pride in yourself, or wanting yourself to appear a certain way, or wanting to look at your best, not whoever Kim Kardashian's best or whatever, but your best. That's I consider that vanity. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as it's like, you keep it to yourself.
I don't know that I would. I think vanity is a strong word for that. Although, of course, it's somewhere adjacent, but I think it's more in the self-confidence and self-esteem section, which really boils down to who is giving you what I say, like, your gold star. Who's giving you the gold star? Are you doing this so that when you wake up, you feel good? And what is it linked to? What does it correlate to? For me, when I get into the best shape of my life, it's really more of it displays the discipline that I'm exhibiting in my life. For me, it feels like an accomplishment, not because of, you look so good, although that's really part of it too. I love the cherry on top, but it means that I'm taking care of my body. It means I'm taking care of my diet. It means that I am usually really more regimented than I typically am. And typically I'm seeing that in other places in my life, in my profession, in my performance at work, in my performance in my relationships. So it's really about, am I doing this for myself, or am I doing this for an audience? Because the problem when you do things for an audience is that you got to find an audience.
Yeah, and it's going to change.
You got to go outside and find an audience, and then you're ain't nobody noticed me today. And then it's versus like, hey, I feel really good. Like, I am dialed in, I'm focused, and I'm showing up to life. Yeah. And that, if that's where the drive is coming from, then I think it's fantastic. Yeah. But it's always a fine line.
Bodybuilding is a great example of that. Like, I love my bodybuilders out there, and I've done a lot of bodybuilding training. I love the sport, but there is a lot of body dysmorphia in bodybuilding. And you were just talking about like that. Who's the audience? Like, I have never ever seen a group of people that are able to come up with a picture of themselves on their phone as fast as a bodybuilder. There's a lot of bodybuilders out there. I mean, before I can get through a full sentence about something, like, if there's any relation to how they looked, then it's up, and it's like boom, boom, boom. It's like, wow, were you just like looking at that just now, or did you pull that up? Like, how did you get that so fast?
I told you the story when I was at the dentist, and I was getting my wisdom teeth pulled, and then after they got pulled, I had to do a crown. I had to do all this drama, and every week they were like drilling. And I have the sweetest girl, and she's so nice, and she's lovely, but she is a bodybuilder. And I thought about your story because there's a drill in my mouth.
You're on the table.
Literally sawing between my teeth so that they can like come together. And she's like, "You're in really good shape. Like, do you bodybuild?" And I said, "No, I just,
did it sound? I don't think it sounded like that. Like, you might have thought.
I thought like, it sounded. So like, exactly. Oh no, I don't. As I'm getting this drill, and she goes, "Oh, well, I bodybuild." Takes the drill out, throws it on the table, whips her phone out, and I'm going through. She's giving me this. She's like, "Oh, here's me boxing," and I've got gauze and blood like falling out of my mouth, and she was like, "This is just album 1."
Oh,
I got
my
4
gosh.
more. I was like, "Oh, yeah, you're great photos,"
Oh wow, yeah. See, that's the example that I'm talking about. Yeah, there's probably a little bit of a problem there, but good for her.
But oh man. But it's a fascinating subject. I think and as with anything, when we look at the things that drive people to really incredible heights or really extreme levels of success, there's usually a balance between something that could be perceived as a really positive motivator and some things that are maybe not the most positive motivators, but they can still propel you. But there does come a point, I call them a payday loan, where it's like, if what pushed you was something that isn't really fueling you or could be potentially toxic, but you've managed to channel it in a way that it's not hurting you on the outside for the rest of the world to see, eventually there comes a point where it will be degrading to you on the inside.
I like that payday loan.
I now do my little my fitness craze thing, and I work out in this little gym that's really basically just 2 people. But for years I could not work out unless I was surrounded by people, because I needed the cross validation of being in that environment, and it worked. Like, I got in really, really good shape, but I had the lowest self-esteem I probably have ever had, because every day what was propelling me was that competition with all these random people that I didn't know. And I was probably the second best shape I've ever been in my life, with the lowest self-esteem I've had in my entire
that's interesting.
life. I mean, I felt like garbage every day.
That's interesting. Well, it just goes to show you how much back-end psychological aspect there is to this. So let's talk. You mentioned positivity. Let's talk about body positivity. So I had never heard that before. You were talking to me about that today. I'm like, what is body positivity?
Where
exactly?
are you living? What, are you under a rock?
I am. It's the rock next to the big stone under the oak tree. That's where I live.
Oh my God, the rock next to the stone. Whew, that's a good neighborhood.
Well, we're coming up.
Body positivity has been a whole thing for, it's been, I'd say, the last decade, which was basically, they had the hyper thin models, like the really unhealthy thin models, and the model diet, which was basically like cocaine and cigarettes. And over time, there was sort of this revolution against this idea about the insane beauty standards that were put on women. It was like, okay, you've got to be unhealthy to be considered beautiful. You've got to be really in the anorexia category, is what they did. So over time, we started seeing different types and different shapes of men and women, because the goal was to say, instead of putting one archetype and saying this is beauty, and if you are not this, then you're ugly, and body shaming, which is like, if you are somebody who might be obese or not fit into that archetype, why would you put that ugly thing on your Instagram or you're fat, or what, all these trolling comments, all this horrible stuff started this movement about body positivity, which is like, don't body shame. And more importantly, there's a lot that goes into body shape that we don't fully understand, because there's plenty of people that are slightly larger that are actually in very good shape. They're cardiovascularly, they're in excellent shape, they're strong, they are they're not, like, oh, pizza, this and that, you know what I mean? And we didn't know that. And so body positivity has been this big movement. And there's been some prominent figures, like Lizzo is a big one. And I talk about her because she's done a good job at illustrating body positivity while not celebrating unhealthy lifestyle. Because she works with her trainer, she puts her videos up. So it's like, just because I'm comfortable and I like my body. And but it doesn't mean I'm not training and want to make sure that I'm exercising my heart, my muscles, my mind. But I just don't feel like I need to look like a twig, and I need to starve myself to get to a certain place. If I'm doing these things, whatever my body looks like is what my body looks like. And I think that's sort of at the core of body positivity.
Well, I like that. I knew that whole trend and everything was going on in the background. I just didn't have a term, but I really like that overall. And I think it could be, there's a fine line for all of this, our societal's view at shape and weight and all of this. There's a fine line that I think is the healthiest way to be. And so
Well, ethical media practices have been sort of at the core of a lot of this, right? Like, how do we start to represent more people? Because there's so many different shapes, sizes, colors, genders, all of it. There's so many different.
Well, that was driven by money too. Like, I know a big one was Victoria's Secret. They had all of these models that were just like you said, but they found that if they finally had someone, in marketing that looked at the sales and what sizes, were the most sold. So those are the people that are spending the most money at the store are not, the shape of some of those models that they had. So if we expose some of that, then their sales went up, and they're like, oh, you know what, we kind of like this body positivity thing.
What's the irony of that is that you put a model on the center stage because she is so unique. So you would imagine that that's probably not going to be your customer base, because most of them are not going to look like this person. So maybe we should expand the pool. And it worked. Open the doors, welcome a few more. But it's a really interesting thing, because I think seeing, even if it is driven by sales, seeing ethical media practices as they move there. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say that the media has become ethical, but they've done a much better job at exposing different colors, different genders, different shapes, different sizes. So I know for me, compared to, people I know that are in the generation behind me and beneath them, what I had as far as my constructs around beauty and physical beauty were completely different. I mean, they don't have that pressure. They don't have that anxiety in the same way. They have different anxieties because they grew up on social media, but they don't have the same pressure because they did get to see other different shapes. We really saw one color and one shape. I remember when I was a senior in high school, my parents used to call me geisha or panda face, which is a joke, but it's actually really sad because I was bleaching my face and I would wear these color contacts, because that's like, I went to this little small, primarily white school, and I'd grown up there and I didn't know, and I was like, I'm not attractive. Like, I don't look like any of these. So I tried to assimilate. And it, I'm grateful that there's enough different representation that people are not going through that to that extent anymore. But it's still a thing. And it can be made more of a thing unless you build up your own internal fortitude and say, you know what, I'm doing this for me. And wherever that leads me, and I want to push it as far as I can. I think that's great. So let's talk a little bit about, just to shift gears, let's talk about some of the reasons why people have a hard time losing weight, or it's just not a thing. This is a good topic to bring up, because I think one of the things we hear with weight loss more than anything is I do all the right things. Like, I'm doing it. I'm at the gym every day. I'm eating the avocados and salads, and my body is not losing weight. I mean, I still remember there was a woman who came to the clinic who was just borderline at tears. She was like, I am sick of it. I have been busting it, and I've tried everything, and I eat so clean, and I don't lose any weight. And we don't do a great job in our culture at educating that there's a science behind that. It's not that you're not doing something correctly. It's not that you're failing. The body has specific settings of where it wants to be. And that's basically what we're doing at the clinic, is helping you hack that. Sometimes your body says, hey, I love your enthusiasm. This is where you're going to stay. So we got to figure out how to jog it out of that and say, you might be happier this way,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so there are changes that your your body will go through as you get older, and those changes affect how optimal your body is at producing hormones, and these hormones set the mood that your body is in for all different types of things. There's all types of hormones and signals for that. Some of those signals have to do with, well, how well does your body actually want to get rid of weight? Are you running a fast metabolism, slow, stubborn metabolism? There's a lot of things that have nothing to do with what you're eating or how much you're working out, to a big extent, and there's ways to hack that, if you understand where your body's coming from and what it's trying to do. That's a big one.
And one of the factors that people hate, but it is legitimate, it is not a lie, it is not a scheme. Stress is real. Stress it's not just practitioners and trainers and coaches who are not doing their job saying, oh no, you're not, it's just because of your stress. No, it's a real biochemical factor that will completely derail.
Absolutely. It is. And it's stress has a way of putting your body into fight or flight. So in the periods where you're not in that immediate fight or flight, what does your body want to do? Like, I always recommend that my patients think about their body like having its own personality, and then things begin to make a little bit more sense. So if I walk outside this building and I get chased by a pack of like wild Doberman pinschers, and I finally get somewhere where I'm safe, Like, what do I want to do? I want to sit down. I want to just take a deep breath, and I want to find a way to protect myself so that that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So your body's way of doing that is to protect yourself, to store things. That's like, okay, now I was just chased. Now I want comfort food.
Yeah.
Or I want to take whatever calories come in and I
Right.
want to store them because something scary might happen tomorrow.
Right.
So and that's literally how your metabolism responds to things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. It's like if you had a financial scare and you start storing money. I'm not going to spend any money. I'm just going to hang on to it just in case something happens at some point.
Yeah. Same thing, and yeah, it's the stress is huge. It affects your cortisol levels and so many different factors inside. That's a big deal.
I think you should talk a little about cortisol specifically because it's a word that I think people are somewhat familiar with. I don't know how familiar, but people might know it's the stress hormone. But talk a little bit about how cortisol affects the body. And what's its purpose? Because there's not really anything in the body that's just like, this is just here to ruin your day.
Yeah. So cortisol is an important hormone. It is a steroid. So cortisol is a steroid that's produced in the adrenal glands, but it's important to have enough cortisol to get through the day, but you don't want to overdo your levels of cortisol.
Yeah.
So cortisol is actually one of those hormones that we have some kind of control over depending on how we think about things and how we work through the day.
Yeah.
If I allow myself to be more of a high-strung anxiety, like everything is doom and gloom, then I'm going to have naturally higher cortisol levels, and higher cortisol levels lead itself towards increased water weight gain, insulin resistance, weight gain, and ultimately heart issues too, and gaining weight, obviously, difficulty sleeping, and actually, and decreased sex drive, like poor cognition, there's so many things that it just goes to, like an overabundance of cortisol, so doing things to help. The more you can help manage your own and do maintenance, we called it mental maintenance. Doing your mental maintenance helps to regulate that, and that's huge. That is definitely huge towards whatever goals you have towards performance.
I think prioritizing stress management in a really tangible way is so important and so undervalued. One of the things that I do, like every day without fail, I have a little app that's called Brainwave that does binaural beats. And I'll sit with the eye covers, usually like sometime between noon and 1:30 for 10 minutes. And I'll just put it on and I'll just try to take a power nap for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've started doing that. I only started that maybe like 2 months ago. But there comes a point where you realize that there is a cultural fetishization, I think that's the word, but we do fetishize stress in this culture. So it's like, if you're not stressed,
yeah.
You ain't working.
Yeah,
you're not American. You should be stressed.
Exactly.
You should be driving. You should be doing things and getting things done and being a go-getter. And so we fetishize stress, which means that if you pause and you step away from it, you can actually watch yourself fall into that, where it's like, I need people to see how stressed I am and how this, and you can, I have so much to do, and I realize that, and I think a lot of people have that pattern and that habit, and there's a conscious choice you can make to say, I'm not going to be that. Like, I actually need to consciously choose that I'm not going to be a stressed person, and I'm going to prioritize stopping when I need to stop, and taking a minute to do a mental vacation, or taking a minute to lay down or meditate or whatever, because it is preventing the majority of people's goals. And it ties directly into weight loss, obviously, but it ties into all of your health. And it really is like the saboteur in your day.
Yeah.
It's not benefiting much.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, stress and cortisol is a big issue. Another factor that can lead to changes are genetic changes. And a lot of people tell me, well, this is just genetic.
Yeah.
The reason why I weigh this much, or the reason why my cholesterol is so high, it's just genetic.
Yeah.
And there are some cases where that is true, and it is a big deal, and there are factors and ways that you can combat that if it's a real thing, but in a lot of cases I look at those and I say, well, okay, tell me about your, how you eat and what you eat, and tell me about your day and everything. And then we go through it, and I make that a full assessment at the end. scientific judgment says, this is not genetic. This is just the menu. And the menu has passed down from generation to generation.
I've got good news and bad news.
Yeah. If we change the menu, then, guess what? We'll fix your genes. So
you are a miracle worker.
I don't know what to say.
Well, I think before, because we are going to touch on the fun stuff. All of this is fun if you're a geek like we are. But we are going to touch on, obviously, the GLP-1 medications. But before we jump into that, I want to hear from you what your top 3, prior to medications, prior to all these other hacks, what are your top 3 weight loss hacks for people who are struggling to lose weight? What are the top 3 things you'd say, okay, try this, try this, try this? And obviously you're going to have to make it a little general because it is case specific with people, but there are some pretty basic things that apply to most people.
So there are 3 things that I talk about with all of my patients when they talk about weight loss. They're all going to get these 3 things every time. And the first one is move your body.
Okay.
Be active, whatever that looks like. If you're out there breaking a sweat, and I mean intentional exercise. So I've talked to people and I said, what do you do for activity? What do you do for exercise? Oh, I exercise. I'm really active. Okay, what do you do? What do you actually do?
I've heard what you said you did.
Yeah.
What do you
actually do? Well, I go run errands and I go shopping and I'm on my feet and I walk around.
Said the word run in it.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, that's great to be active. Being active is good, but don't count that.
Yeah.
It needs to be intentional. I'm going and I'm going to do 45 minutes of such and such,
yeah.
Whatever it is, if it's a Zumba class or it's a YouTube video or if it's strength training at the gym, strength training at home or going for
hike.
Going for a hike or going for like a jog or something like with intentionality to it. Even certain types of walks, okay. But like obviously the more intense it is, the more it's going to drive towards your goal. So being active and doing something fun, breaking a sweat, doing those things with intensity sends a different signal to your body that tells your body, hey, we got to get rid of this excess, storage. And without that signal, it ain't going to happen. Like I know you and I, we've had workouts. If you work out in the gym long enough, you're going to recall a workout that you just went and you just kind of move stuff. It's like, whatever, I'm here. And you don't break a sweat at all and you leave after like an hour. That's not going to send the signal. It just won't do it. So if you like walk around the grocery store, your body doesn't get the signal. It figures that this is its usual routine. So if you don't push those things, then it's just not going to happen. So that when it comes to nutrition, with lifestyle changes towards nutrition, I focus more on how you eat versus what you eat. So most people in America that want to lose weight, we were taught about the food pyramid in elementary school and everything. It was horrible. But like we basically know what to eat. Most people understand what relatively clean eating is. Don't do anything in extremes. Eat smaller portions. Every day, all like throughout the day, so that means, 4 or 5 meals, 6 meals, per day. And I mean, when I say meals, I mean small, and getting your body used to that is much, much better. And that really sets a lot of people up for success if they're able to do that, and obviously staying hydrated with that. The third thing is going to be sleep, effective recovery time and sleep. Very important. So if you're stressed, then you can't sleep. So if you're dependent on caffeine and you can't sleep because there's a lot of things. There's a lot of factors that play into that. So those would be the 3 big things.
That's huge. Right sleep is huge. People underestimate how important sleep is, and actually how much as you get older, how much of a process it is. Like I turn the TV off usually around 8 most nights, and then I will read. Just to kind of because there's all the I know the phones have like the warm light and stuff, but there's a lot that goes into kind of winding your body down. So
I call it landing the plane.
So
no plane just like lands immediately. Like it has to get into a formation and it's got to work its way down.
I love that though. I think those are really solid tips. And the big one that I think is not to skip breakfast. I know that sounds cheesy because I feel like people have heard it, and yet I still hear it like all the time. Like, even though
we'll get into that when we get into the diet
down, you know, like we've heard like don't skip breakfast, but then people are like, yeah, you know, I skip breakfast every day. And I'm like, there's a whole reason why you want to eat it. You got to break the fast, and you've got to communicate to the body that there is nourishment in regular intervals, and that consists. You don't have to be as crazy as, you know. I'm a little intense. I eat at the exact same times every day because as you so elegantly put out,
you're John Davis.
Because I love routines. They're the things that make me feel like the birds dress me in the morning. You know, you open my windows.
What would John Davis do?
That's the real WWJD, but JDD. But no, like the body, by having those regular intervals of food, it's exactly like what we're talking about with the whole analogy with the potential financial scare. The body kind of sees, okay, this is consistent, it's cool, we can spend the money. Versus like, I don't know, these meals are coming. There's one here, there's one over here. Let's just keep the money in the bank until things get saved. Before
we get too much backlash, because there are people that are really, really intense about the certain diet that they think is the best.
The intermittent fasting.
And that is like a lifestyle cultish type of thing. Like they're really into it. I heard a really funny joke. I thought it was funny.
No.
How can you tell?
Oh God.
How can you tell if someone's a vegan?
Oh no. Please don't get us canceled.
Oh, yeah. How can you tell?
How?
Because they'll tell you.
Okay, that actually is really funny. We did just get canceled because of that, but that was
hilarious.
Actually, I was a vegan. That was so true. I was a vegan for 3 years.
You told everyone you came in contact
with. In the entire West Coast, people in the airport. You know, is this water vegan? Yeah, I'm a vegan. Yeah, it's
yes.
No, that's so funny. I know there's a million different types of diets, and you know, I think I've done every diet that I could because I get curious about them, but I think consistency is key. Honestly.
Consistency is key,
and sustainability.
But a lot of the diets, some of them are designed around different different hormonal balances. I'll say that.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're older, your hormones are not as optimized, your body's sluggish, you're frustrated, you know, then you kind of have to do a very intense type of, you know, kind of out there type of diet in order to show results. And you say, oh, this one worked for me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one of the things, a big factor in our clinic is that one of the first things that we try and do is when someone comes into our clinic, we try and bring them to a more optimal state all the way around, you know. So that's generally a 22, 23-year-old. You know, when most of us think back to when we were 22, 23, it's like, you know what? Things just worked back then. My medicine cabinet didn't look like a freaking GNC.
I didn't even know what a medicine cabinet was.
Yeah. So
first time I opened the mirror was 28. I was like, "There's something back here."
That's awesome. That's good. Yeah, but that, you know, if we can bring our bodies hormonally more like that, then we're dealing with a system that works more like a 22 or 23-year-old. Yeah. So the types of things that work for our patients, you know, 65-year-olds that hormonally are 23-year-olds, you know, are going to be totally different. You know, so try and tell a 22-year-old, like, hey, you should go 16 hours without eating. Wouldn't that be good for you? Like, no, it ain't gonna happen.
I was one of those crazy 22-year-olds, so I did try that. I tried to do the intermittent fasting at I think it's 8-16, right? 8 hours on and 16 hours off. I tried so hard. Oh my God, I had so much self-loathing. I was like, you're so undisciplined. Because I'd be like in the kitchen, like, you know, eating random things at 10 p.m. because I was so hungry. And I was like, you failed again.
Well, it's because the metabolism of a 22-year-old is totally different.
It's so
you know,
fast.
So all of these variables have to go into the type of diet that and, you know, all kinds of things. So whether it's, if it's low carb, I had someone today that was, you know, that wanted to do, he was upset because he was putting on weight and he wanted to do 2 14-mile bike rides and fast all day long at the same time. You know, and I'm just telling that's not a good idea. You know, there's other ways to do it. You know, so there's you know, some of these diets you can hurt yourself, you know, and it's important to, and people don't, in marketing, they just say everybody should do the John Davis diet or whatever. And it's like, you know, it shouldn't be like that. Like, we have to take a step back and tailor it to the person that we're working for, you know, because there's a lot of different options out there.
However, there is an option that is 100% not allowed and not correct. And I don't even know if you heard of it, but I just have to make sure I put my opinions on this very sternly. The chicken shake. Have you heard of this chicken shake?
Oh, no, please don't tell me it is what I think it is.
It's so wild. So this is, I don't know where this originated. I think it was some show in Korea, and then it caught on to like a bodybuilder who had like a big following. It became a whole thing. It is boiled chicken and a little bit of like orange juice in the blender.
Ooh, no.
And they drink like, I think it's 4 pounds of chicken. And I saw it and I was so horrified. And this is like, it's become a thing. You know, it's like, this is why there's moments like this where I'm like, have we earned the right for social media? And I saw some dude who did it. And he was like, wow, this is the consistency of vomit. So please do not have the chicken shake.
There are diets to stay away from. That would be one of them, you know. But I usually set people up with a balanced macro diet. You know, let's work on, you know, getting your body in the mood to even want to lose weight in the first place, and then go from there. So like that's how we really set things up. So let's jump into some medications.
Yes, I think it's the time to remove the curtain from the Wizard of Oz and go into semaglutide.
Well, yeah, semaglutide is a good one. Those are in the category of what I call the GLP-1s. You know, there's that is without a doubt the most powerful weight loss medication, and I feel it's the safest one if it is used appropriately. You know, so semaglutide is the generic name for Ozempic, Wegovy, and there's others out there. Tirzepatide is one that's also very interesting. That one works off of 2 receptors. Then there's a new one that we started using. It's called retatrutide. You know, so I need to write a letter to whoever's coming up with these names. Like,
we'll help. We can help. we can assist because this ain't it. This isn't your calling.
It won't be cheap, but we'll come up with some better names for
There's another one as well. It's cagrilintide or cagrelintide, which works on amylase.
So that works on another part that comes from the pancreas. You know, so that one's interesting. So definitely a new wave of medications, and they're based off of hormones that your body naturally already has that help to tell your body, you know, how fast to run the metabolism, you know. And so by the time you're 50 years old, you have half of the circulating GLP-1 hormone that you had when you were 25. And that's the signal to tell your body to do, you know. So if that's the case, then sure, you're not going to lose weight the same way, you know. But now we have ways to crank that back up again. You know, back in the day with kind of the old school medications, they were kind of scary.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, which is really, I think, important. There's a stigma around weight loss medications, and it comes from
for good reason.
When there was
it was like one of the medications, phentermine, and we still prescribe phentermine from time to time. But you have to understand the goal of these tools, like what they're doing. Phentermine is a stimulant.
It's in the amphetamine family.
Yeah, so there's a lot of times, like if you get a drug test at work, like it'll show as methamphetamine, like, you know, but it is a stimulant. It can make your heart race. It can keep you up at night. You know, some people do use it off chance for, like, you know, ADD sometimes, you know, but they would actually combine that with another medication, fenfluramine. That's what it is. Fenfluramine. When you combine the two, that was called fen-phen. That was popular, you know, because it helped a lot of people lose weight. It also helped a lot of people get heart attacks, because it caused some really bad issues with your heart, you know. So
there's phentermine. There's also ephedrine.
Ephedrine, you know, ephedrine is kind of in that fight or flight response, you know.
Mimics adrenaline.
It mimics adrenaline a lot, like clenbuterol. You know, very commonly used in the bodybuilding community. That's another big time stimulant. You know, I took that once when I was training, and it came in a little dropper, and you were supposed to stir it because it wasn't all consistent, and so I didn't stir it, and I just grabbed from the bottom, you know, some of it, and it was awful. I almost called 911 on myself because I'm laying there thinking I'm gonna die. Yeah, so don't recommend that, by the way.
It's a totally. I think it's good to talk about the traditional weight loss medication, which is funny because actually, the majority of ADHD medications were diet pills before they became ADHD medications, like Adderall, Ritalin. They were all diet pills. I gotta remember the story in more depth, but you can
make more money off diet. than you can off of just regular stimulants, off ADHD. That's
well,
probably why. That's the pharmaceutical companies will drive their marketing one way or another for that reason.
There's you'll have to research it, but the story of Ritalin is wild because it was basically this German doctor who was experimenting with different types of amphetamines to try to help his wife like lose a little bit of weight and get better at tennis.
Oh wow!
And he like stumbled on methylphenidate, which is Ritalin, and he named it Ritalin after his wife, whose name was Margarita, and everybody called her Rita, which is why it's called Ritalin.
Wow, that's funny.
So you hear this, it's like, I think we're in this era in our culture right now of unearthing the stories. We've kind of always just sort of accepted all these things, and now we're kind of like, well, why is this like that? And you start to see all this history, but when it comes to weight loss medications, all of these ADHD meds started as weight loss meds, and they still have, serious side effects.
That's why this new wave of medications are so important, because they're not stimulants.
Right.
I've had so many patients tell me, look, Chris, I'm doing the dose, and it's usually a once a week, sometimes twice a week shot. I'm taking the semaglutide the way I'm supposed to, and I don't really feel anything.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, but I've lost 2 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, that's great. So it's just working in the background, and that's how, natural hormone use is supposed to. Yeah. There's one other like old school medication that I always thought was hilarious. And it was called Orlistat.
I'm sorry, what?
It's called Orlistat. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's this one came out I think it came out in the 90s. And so, when you see those commercials on TV, and at the end it has all the side effects, so one of the very common side effect was anal leakage.
Oh, I do remember this.
Yes.
As soon as you said that,
yeah. And the reason why is this is how they designed this medication. It blocks one of your digestive enzymes. It's called lipase. Okay. Lipase is the enzyme that actually breaks down your fat that you eat so that it can be absorbed into your intestines. And if you cannot break down the fat into small enough particles to be absorbed, it just stays in your intestines.
And it falls out.
Well, it's heated, like your body's at a higher temperature, so it just turns into oil. And
oh my God.
So you can use your imagination after that. But that was Orlistat. I don't know how many people actually went on that, but
so
you can
crazy.
get some responses in the comment section.
The stuff that I know I'm put on your foil hats here, but it's like we have all the stuff that we're looking as the FDA is causing, some issues with peptides. I'm like, but you let that go?
Yeah, really. Yeah.
You let oil butt go, but we can't get a peptide?
I know, right? Yeah, that's why we advocate for common sense medicine. but yeah, so those are the new ones that are out that are really big. And others one that I know you and I really, really like is called low dose naltrexone.
Yes, so this is interesting. Before we jump to that, because that's a really fun one. That one jumps between not only a nootropic, but also it's blended into a lot of different weight loss medications. The reason why I think it's important to talk about the traditional versus the current is because some of what has made people really reluctant to dive headfirst into some of the really amazing innovations that have come from science in this section is because of the stigma around weight loss medications, particularly the crazy side effects. So talk a little bit about, the side effects that you can see from some of these GLP-1s and when you're going to see them. Because with the CNS stimulants, their mechanism of weight loss is to accelerate the central nervous system and suppress appetite by doing that. It's sort of like an extreme version of coffee. It speeds you up, speeds up your whole CNS, suppresses your appetite, which makes you kind of warmer, burn through more. But you will have side effects. There's not really a sort of, well, you do, you don't.
And,
you will get
rebound weight gain.
You get rebound weight gain. So it's not sort of, with a lot of the GLP-1s, you can get side effects, but it's not a guarantee if it's dosed in a specific way and if it's under a medical practitioner, compared to if you're doing phentermine, you're most likely going to get you're going to get the jitters, you're going to get, because it's got an onset. It's not a gradual thing. It has an onset and it's got a duration. And so during that period, you're going to experience these things. And then when that period is done, you're going to stop experiencing it.
And it's not directly working on your metabolism. Right. It's indirectly doing it. So like a lot of those medications, the stimulant types anyway, the goal is to trick your body into thinking that it's moving faster than what it actually is.
Yes.
And so that sets a baseline for your body. So what happens when that baseline isn't there anymore?
Yeah.
You know, everything goes back to normal. So like, and you gain the weight back. You know, so it's an artificial thing that you just can't keep up.
Yeah.
You know, so one of the nice things I like about the GLP-1s, if they're, I say this over and over again, if they're used appropriately, and that means the dosing has to be tailored to the person. You know, we usually start people at a low conservative dose, and we see how they respond, because I never know. You might be one of the ones that's like super sensitive to it.
Yeah.
You know, and that means you only need a little bit, and then that's the only push that your body needs. But I have other people who have a very, very stubborn metabolism, and they need more of a push. You know, so the instructions on all of the GLP-1 medications are basically start at a low dose, and everyone, no matter who you are, in 4 weeks you double the dosage. And then 4 weeks later, no matter who you are, you double your dosage again. 4 weeks later, double it again. 4 weeks later, double it. And that's ridiculous with any medication, especially a hormone.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where people run into all kinds of side effects, because they're doubling a dose of a medication that they have no business doubling, and they were perfectly fine where they were.
Yeah.
You know, so we manage it a little bit different way, but like one of the nice things about it is that it does directly work on your metabolism.
Yeah.
So and we've even seen like permanent effects. Like even people are off of the semaglutide.
Yes.
Like they still have effects, are still, you know, getting the benefits of that. You know, but most of them, you know, they when they're on the semaglutide, they get effective weight loss and they get to their goal. It's a lot easier to stay fit than it is to get fit.
Yeah.
Getting fit is like swimming upstream, and staying fit is just treading water where you're at.
Yeah.
You know, so if you've already incorporated all of the lifestyle stuff into that, so you're staying active, you're working out on a regular basis intentionally, you know, and I always advocate for as many times as you can. So like 5, 4, anything less than 4, you know, I you know, it's not going to be very effective. But like 5, 6 days a week, and it doesn't have to be a lot. Like if you're busy and you're working a 12-hour shift and you can only get in a 10-minute YouTube video, like there's some 10-minute videos that'll kick my butt. Like I just can't, like, you know, so anything to give your body that signal, you know, so those kind of things I think are really, really valuable, you know, to keep in mind. And if you're doing all of those things and you get to your goal weight, you can peel off the semaglutide medication and your body doesn't know the difference. And you're actually doing pretty well, and you can maintain your weight and you don't rebound.
And you don't get the semaglutide face and all that kind of
that's
stuff.
one of the extreme side. Yeah. So like, and our patients have no idea what that. We don't get that. And mostly because a lot of our patients too, we started with, okay, let's bring your hormones, all of your hormones, back to a 22-year-old. Yeah. You know, and many times that includes testosterone, which is your anabolic hormone. If you're on testosterone and semaglutide can try and run after your fat as much as your fat and muscle. Yeah. You know, to break that down as it speeds up your metabolism, but testosterone protects your muscle from being broken down. It keeps your body in an anabolic state, so you're not going to lose, you know, muscle.
Yeah. Now there's we have to do a Mythbusters, because I have loved watching this, and you know, it's such a joy to get to work with Chris, because you know he is more than anything he's like, he can research like nobody. He finds these crumbs and finds that really can get to the heart of things. So one of the fascinating things is we are really watching the era of misinformation. And how it's protected under certain. There's certain ways in which you're allowed to fund misinformation campaigns, and it can be really effective. One of the big ones that we looked at a few weeks ago is that ketamine is addictive. When you actually look at PubMed, you can see multiple studies that have been done and proven that it is not addictive. But if you Google ketamine addictive, you will get, you know, a million articles.
There's a scientific way to determine addiction, you know, and they found that ketamine is like less addictive than coffee.
Yeah, it's wildly low addiction. So that's a different episode. But in this whole wonderful world of Google misinformation, there is this fascinating concept that compounded semaglutide is less or not effective when compared to Wegovy. It's you know, you've got the Wegovy, and then you've got these sort of dirty compounded sugar water. Does nothing to the body. So
let me throw out one guess as to who funded that, marketing
the donor would like to remain anonymous.
Yes, I know, right?
But it's a really we saw a really interesting article from a pharmacy actually here in Florida, who he is at his the owner of that pharmacy. I can't remember the name, but he is at his best weight. His blood sugar is incredible, and he's been in the article was like getting by on compounded semaglutide, which was sort of it was meant to be satirical because there's all this information out, and there was this is the latest wave of it that compounding is not really the same thing or not as good. Before the previous round of this, which we had a wave of patients in the beginning, I want to say around November was this wave that was the cardiovascular benefits that they found that people were getting from semaglutide.
Yeah.
They said that only applies to Wegovy. If you're doing compounded semaglutide, you don't get any of those cardiovascular.
Wow.
So please.
We're laughing because that is literally the exact same chemical compound.
Yes. Please break down this myth for us.
Yeah.
So that people can rest assured that your compounded semaglutide, wherever you're getting it, well, okay, I don't want to say wherever you're getting it from, but as long as it's from a legitimate clinic, if you're getting compounded semaglutide instead of Wegovy, you may rest assured. Yeah. And here is why.
Yeah. So for that, I'm going to have to take us all back to like 10th grade organic chemistry. So H2O is H2O. It's oxygen and 2 hydrogen. And that's water. It doesn't matter where you go or how you put that together. Like you've got water. And that's it. And so from a structural standpoint, we have the capability now, not only in the manufacturing of peptides, because semaglutide is a peptide, so a peptide hormone. So we have the technology now to manufacture things with absolute precision, 99.99% precision of the molecular structure of these things, very similar to like H2O.
Yeah.
So the molecular structure is set up a certain way, and you have to like in America. Like if you're buying legitimate semaglutide from a U.S.-based pharmacy that is FDA licensed, approved, and all certified and everything like that, they have to go through very, very strict testing processes to make sure that they have the exact molecular structure of the compound that they're after, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if they don't have that, it's literally the exact same test, the exact same machines and processes that the big pharma company uses. It's just used under there's a different name on the building, and besides that, it's the same thing as far as what you're doing on the inside, so like all of those structures are still the same, and you can rest assured that if they were not, if it was 80% or 70 or 95% even, like they wouldn't be able to sell them. Like they would not get certified, they would not get licensed, they would not be able to go on with their product. Period.
It's a considerable liability because they get audited. They have quality control standards that have to be adhered to, which is actually really important to mention because there are, it's not to ding this, but we get the question a lot from people about getting peptides from the chemical, what are they called? Peptide
research chemical.
There we go. Research chemical companies. And the big difference, just to kind of answer this, once and for all, is that they are not required to adhere to quality control standards. So they might be making this exactly the same way, but they might not be.
There's nobody over their shoulder, and some of these processes are really expensive to get the machines to build it right. It takes a lot of money. And the compounds and preservatives that have to be put in and all the testing takes a lot of money. So there's no one standing over their shoulder saying, hey, you want to make sure you have the right preservatives in there, they could be putting coconut water in there. So, you never know. And some of them, some of them are okay, some of them are decent, but you don't have that. You're not going to have that.
And you don't have the peace of mind and the consistency you could get. It's it's not to ding. I get that that sometimes you want to have access to these things and they're less expensive through that. And everything, especially in this area of life, is a choice of risk. What risks you're willing to take. But I think it's important to mention that's one of the big differences. Is that this stuff is adhered to by rigorous standards and quality control. So, is there a difference? No. It's name brand versus generic.
Yeah.
Same thing. Same chemical. There's requirements.
There's different types. People come up to me like, oh, well, should I do the Manjaro, tirzepatide, or Wegovy, or whatever? And honestly, there's a big difference in price with all of them. Is there a correlative or a huge difference in their action? There's maybe some difference in action, but it's not massive, And If I were you, I'd get with, it's much more important, much more valuable to get with someone that is really trying to tailor things to you and your understanding your system, you know, and what works. And it's a journey that you take, you know, so that's the most important thing to go through.
And one final thing before we jump onto LDN, which is interesting, and there's always, we're going to, you know, we send out articles, we have stuff posted on the website, so please feel free to, you know, jump in to read more about this. But there's an interesting difference between semaglutide, tirzepatide, and retatrutide, and it has to do with the number of weight loss hormone receptors that they work on. And if you can really quickly touch on that, just so that, because people don't really know, they're like, okay, is it just the same? Because we see this in medicine, we see this in everything, where it's like, hey, we just let's remake it again, but just sort of do the same. So they're actually not the same. They work very similarly, but they are not the same medication, and they have different functions, you know, as far as where they work and how many different receptors they work on. So can you quickly give them the tea?
Quickly.
I know that's really tough for that. This is your challenge.
So the three my best advice is to look at them all as a whole and say, and don't even go down the rabbit hole, and just say, I'm going to go find a good clinician that it will actually work with me, like, and will tailor things to me. And that's going to take you further than anything. You know, but if you just wanted to geek out on this, like, I'm going to do a whole video where another video on semaglutide and the others where I just really dig into it. But quick answer is that, yes, you're right. They do work on different receptors. Semaglutide works on the GLP-1 receptor. You know, so and each receptor is a location of activity. You know, so when you activate the receptor, a whole cascade of events, you know, happen. So basically the semaglutide is the primary receptor that it goes to, that one, you know, which does great results. The second one works on the same GLP-1 receptor, but it also works on a different receptor. How much that receptor really plays into the effectiveness of the weight loss is the research is a little back and forth on that. Some people say that it takes you one step further. Some people say it makes you take one step backwards, actually. You know, depending on many variables, most of them are going to be variable to you as a person. Okay, so, you know, the third medication, retatrutide, works on 3 different receptors, a GLP-1 and 2 others, without getting too complicated with it. You know, so you have a little bit more flexibility with more effectiveness with the retatrutide, is what's shown so far. You know, but all of them are safe, and they generally work in the same type of way.
Cool.
You know, so but I wouldn't say that, well, since, I mean, a lot of the marketing that's pushed out is, well, this one works off 2 receptors, so it's twice as good. No. No. You know, so don't fall into that trap. But we offer all 3, and we're happy to talk about all 3, you know, and go through it. You know.
And it's good. It's good to know, because there are people that do, you know, as with anything, you want to have more options, because your body is going to plug in differently. Some people don't respond super well to semaglutide. There's alternatives that are still in that family that you might respond better to.
One thing I will say, though, before we jump off semaglutide, is that the biggest thing that I try and impose to people as they go through the journey of their weight loss is that you do not want to rely on the semaglutide.
No.
The more you put into, the more you're relying on any medication for your weight loss, the more likely you will rebound afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I really like to lift up all the other things, the activity, the diet, you know, the stress control, mental maintenance, and everything, you know, so that by the time you get there, you know, the semaglutide is just like an afterthought, you know.
That is such a perfect segue to LDN, to low-dose naltrexone, because, you know, I was having this conversation with Christian, who's my partner, a few days ago, and I was laughing because, you know, we've been spending some time with Sophia and going to the gym with Sophia, and she's just kicking butt. You know,
yeah, that's my wife.
Yeah, and one of the fascinating things is that, you know, we don't like to do things in the clinic that we don't have any sort of experience with. So we've done low dose naltrexone, both Chris and myself, and what's fascinating is that it really has clarified, like with all medications, that they're meant to enhance what you're doing, but they will not do the work. You know, but if you're doing, you know, if you're paddling your boat and you got a sail, the medications will be some wind. You know, they will push and propel, but
Yeah.
you're not going to be drinking a Mai Tai
Yeah.
while the boat moves.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah,
So-
we're not there yet.
So what is low-dose naltrexone, now that I've opened with this mysterious story?
Naltrexone is an amazing medication. I like it because it's very simple. The low dose is works very well. It's very clean. It goes in, it does its job, and it leaves.
And it's very inexpensive.
Yeah, it's actually pretty inexpensive too. So I mean, we could do a whole episode on naltrexone. So, but basically, the way it works is that the naltrexone isn't actually doing the work, you know. So that I can explain that a little bit. Naltrexone was originally discovered or created for the opioid epidemic. You know, people that were heavily addicted to morphine, oxycodone, OxyContin, Percocet, like all of those things. You know, those are opioid-based medications, which means they go and they actually hit receptors that you already have, endorphin receptors actually. You know, and your body naturally already has endorphin receptors. Those are morphine. That's where morphine came from. So they hit those, they flood those receptors, and then you get this, like, you know, this high feeling or whatever, you know, that people get heavily addicted to. So they came out with two medications. Narcan, we've heard of. You know, that's a shot that you give to someone that's, like, you know, having an overdose, and it snaps them out of it within seconds. You know, naltrexone is the other one that works in the same way. It goes and it selectively blocks those endorphin receptors and pushes whatever's attached to it, pushes it off, and so that nothing can attach to those receptors. It pisses off the person that's high because they're not high anymore, and you've just blown it for them, you know. But that's how it works. That's how a regular high dose works. So they took all these patients, and they're like, okay, they're in rehab, and they're trying to wean them off of this naltrexone. They're no longer taking any of these opioids anymore. So they're weaning down on the dosage of naltrexone that they take every day, and they found something really exciting in just a window of low dose, you know, treatment of the naltrexone as they're weaning down. They found that all kinds of really cool things started happening. Everybody was in a good mood all of a sudden. They were thinking sharper. They started to lose a little bit more weight.
Yeah.
They didn't have as much aches and pains, you know, and they were just they processed things better, you know, in a better way.
Improved
you know, and
immunology
clearer.
too, right?
Yeah, their immune system. And when they did further research, they realized that it boosted their immune system. It actually boosted their growth hormone levels, anti-aging, and all of that. You know, so they found all this really cool stuff in the low dose. So they're still tapering down, right? When they finally tapered down to the point where they weren't taking any naltrexone, they just went back to normal, like regular people again. You know,
the enemy of everything we seek.
Their mood just went back to being crotchety again. You know? So like, wow, there's something really cool about that initial, you know, that little window. So what they found was that what the naltrexone actually does, and I love this, the naltrexone goes in and it blocks the receptor, but a low dose. We'll just block it for just a little bit, just for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. You know, just enough to send a signal back to your brain that produces these endorphins to say, hey guys, we're not getting any endorphins down here. Can you maybe make a little bit more?
Yeah.
So it raises your baseline endorphin level, not flooded to the point where you're, you know, high or whatever, you know, but if you can just raise the baseline endorphin level, you know, then all of a sudden you have other people saying, you know what, that's a pretty pleasant guy over there. You know, he's a pretty happy dude, you know, and little things like that, like when you raise that level, and all the other things start coming into play too.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting because the naltrexone just comes in, it just works for an hour and a half, and it leaves.
Now, I'm curious, why is it, or is there, you might not know the answer to this, but does it work the same way with Narcan? Like, could low-dose Narcan be a thing?
It could, but the Narcan is a shot.
I see.
Generally,
that's
you know,
the difference. Okay.
Yeah, the naltrexone it's easy, it's really inexpensive, and you know it's and you can stay on it forever. I mean, there's zero side effects to it.
Yeah,
because what's actually happening is not done by the naltrexone.
Right.
Your body is making more natural endorphins based off this signal.
Yeah.
And there you go.
We love to see, in general, things that cause a ramping effect in the body means that it is
of natural
boosting.
things.
Yeah, it's boosting. Anything that you take and immediately you're having something that's got an onset that the drug itself is doing something in the body.
Yeah.
That is responsible for what you're experiencing. Things that it's like you take it daily and then you start, you know, adaptogens are like that as well, where you take them every day and then over time, like, oh, this is like momentous.
Yeah.
What that is your body naturally cranking up whatever it's doing, rather than you're not changing the dose of the drug, but you're noticing the effects increase. It's because the drug isn't actively responsible for the effects. Your body's production is responsible for the effects.
It's just sending a signal. Yeah.
That's what we want to look at when we're looking at things that's going to make people feel healthy and that are going to actually be easier on the system and support natural functions.
Yeah, no side effects. Like, I can't even think of any side effects. Like, I shouldn't say no, but like, I can't think of any.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a good one to go. Other medications that are good for weight loss, like a really, really old medication, metformin, actually, is a great one. It's an old diabetes medication. So what it does, it helps to boost your insulin sensitivity, so you're burning through glucose a little bit better, more effectively, and it blocks the absorption of sugar into your intestines. So I prefer that you take, I tell my patients to take one pill just before lunch and one pill just before dinner. If you take metformin and you don't eat anything, I promise you'll only do it once.
Oh,
because you'll be running to the bathroom and everything. But that's my recommendation. Definitely seek out medical care. For something like that. One is a prescription. Another medication that's an herbal form very similar to that is berberine. Berberine is a great herbal that's used to kind of boost your glucose metabolism and your insulin sensitivity. That's a great one. You basically take it the same way you would take the metformin. Those are great to keep on hand.
That's awesome. Well, so that's weight loss. I mean, I think we covered a lot of stuff. I think as with anything and anytime we talk in the podcast, you can always reach out. You can reach out to us at the clinic. You can email us. You can email myself. You can email Chris. You can find us on our socials. And if you have questions about things, we're always available to answer them. This is real. We're geeks with this stuff.
Oh, we love this stuff. This is just so much fun for us.
Yeah, and it's really cool. And I think if there's anything else that you take away, or if there's nothing else that you take away, it's that there are options. Like if you are somebody that is so frustrated because you've been stuck and you feel like you're putting in the effort. One of the biggest goals that we've had, and not only with this podcast, but everything that we do and all of the endeavors that we work on together, is to create opportunities for hope for people that are actually validated.
Yes, we thrive off of that. We thrive off of that. I'll give you this one little thing. I had a patient, and I'm so proud of her. She's in her 60s, and she started working with me like after her, and she had been a widow for a few years, and she 5 or 6 years, and she wanted to get back kind of in the dating scene and everything and stuff like that, and so she knew she needed to lose weight, as a part of that, so we helped her through the process and everything, and she was one of those that didn't believe that she would be able to do it or ever be able to like even have a relationship with someone, or anyone would think she's pretty, and so we worked with all of this stuff and she realized over time that like, hey, this is working. She had been doing so many other things that never amounted to any kind of results, and now this is working, now that we're working on things. So she called me up, this was a month or so ago, and she had found a new love in her life, and she was planning on getting married, and this is the coolest part, she was going dress shopping for the wedding dress, and she was nearly in tears, and she was like, Chris, I am shopping for the same size dress that I had when I was in my 20s and I got married the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. And she's in her 60s.
So we love those stories. We thrive off of those. So life is too short to be frustrated and to beat your head against a wall with an obstacle like this.
Yeah.
There are pathways, there's science-based pathways that are healthy, that you can do. Like we talked about before, always put your own energy into it. There's always something you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely. The ultimate transformation medication drug is hope. Hope. But it really is. I know that sounds like a Disney movie, but it is. And and it's not empty hope. We don't sell you on empty hope and then be like, oh well, that's not going to get better. Yeah. It's like
you just didn't hope strong enough.
Yeah, exactly. Your hope level was weak. But no, there are if there's nothing else that you take away, there are so many options.
Oh yeah,
there are so many options. This is one of the best times to pursue.
Yeah. And unfortunately, modern medicine is not good at that. Like, we were not taught that in med school.
No.
We really weren't. If someone wants to lose weight, eat more salad, walk. And like literally, that's the advice that you get from primary care doctors a lot of times, you know, and it's unfortunate, you know, but yeah, so like we're here, and we enjoy those stories, we enjoy helping people and inspiring people, and that's why we're here. So we love it.
And I gotta do the thing, but if you liked this, make sure that you subscribe or go out, share it with friends, and then reach out. Let us know if there's stuff that we have a huge list of things that we want to talk about that we are super passionate about. But if there's stuff that you're really curious about, please send us a message, and you know, maybe
gives us something else to geek out on.
Yeah,
I love that.
Maybe we'll be like, maybe we'll be like, no.
You're not supposed to say that.
Oh, oops. Edit the beep. But anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us on Living 360. Again, my name is John.
I got to give you the answer. The answer to the quiz.
Yes. Sorry.
Oh,
okay,
man, see,
quiz.
we almost missed it. All right. Okay. What happens to the 10 pounds of fat that you lose?
What happens?
You don't have an answer, right?
No, I already.
Okay. Do you want to put any money down? Okay, we probably shouldn't.
No.
So a fat molecule, very similar to a sugar molecule, glucose, C6H12O6. Yeah. A fat molecule is just a much, to keep it simple, you know, is a much larger variation of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. Okay, that's a fat molecule. All right. So in order to, and believe me, I'm simplifying things. This was a really amazing physicist that came up with all this. But the metabolic process of burning fat, we call it burning fat, but breaking down fat into smaller components, which in turn releases energy, because it's the energy of those bonds that create the storage of energy in the first place. So water is required to break it down. Okay, and then it goes through the process inside the body of being broken down. Ultimately, the energy is released and attaches to ATP. ATP forms of energy, right? But then there's other stuff that's still there.
Yeah.
Water is a byproduct after all of it's broken down. Remember, it started out as carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Water is broken down. Okay, or that's the end result. Water and carbon dioxide.
So you pee and breathe out your fat.
Yes.
That is wild.
Yes.
That is wild. So now you can say in consults you're just not peeing and breathing enough.
So if you actually take the molecular weight of a fat molecule and the molecular weight of the water and the molecular weight of the carbon dioxide that you breathe out, it's equal.
That's wild. That's wild.
It's pretty cool, huh?
My answer was very close. It was not 100, but it was very close.
Didn't you say I went to the same place the socks go or something like that?
Yes, and then I said it turns into gold,
okay.
Which is very similar to
close
the molecular weight of gold and the molecular weight of fat.
No. But good try.
This is why I don't do consults.
We'll have another question next time, because it's all good fun.
Yeah, but thank you guys so much for joining us, and then we will see you on the next episode. We look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Enjoy.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy. Bye.